right, welcome to another Sub-CLE. Today we have Dan Cull. Dan Cull, if you remember a place, I don't know, you might know of it, Peabodys in Cleveland. He was the owner of that, and I'm sure he's got a lot of great stories to tell. But Dan, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks, Vince, for having me. I appreciate it.
No, and, you know, this whole podcast, you know, I was just want to document Cleveland things. And I mean, I don't, there's probably about the top 20 people that you can ask for Cleveland music and Cleveland underground, and you're going to get like a lot of good stories. And I think you're one of them.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that's a huge compliment because there's amazing people that are part of the Cleveland history of music. That's for sure. Yeah. That's incredible.
Nice. So let's just start from the beginning. So you grew up in Cleveland, or?
So actually, I grew up. My hometown's in Aurora.
Okay.
I was actually out there today because we're getting my house ready for my mother to sell her home finally, and she's moving into Northfield.
Okay.
So after 46 years of living there, and I was there for 44 years. My birthplace and everything, born and raised, and finally they're selling that home. But I live in Rocky River now, but when I was younger, when I owned Peabodys, I lived in downtown Cleveland.
Okay.
I went to Akron University, actually with Josh Cabot, my partner that I own Peabodys with.
Okay.
We went to Akron University together in 96 and 97. What do you call it? Threw huge parties there.
Right.
Turned that into a business, basically. We were big rave promoters.
Okay.
And then we turned that into, into a really just basically awesome events, and then we switched that over into buying Peabodys because I became the general manager. From my brother owned Peabodys actually.
Okay.
In 1995 to 2000.
Okay.
So in 98 to 2000 when I was his general manager. Right after my 21st birthday, he asked me to be the general manager, and I was like, hell yeah, that'd be amazing. So I was actually the talent buyer and general manager of Peabodys, and also the Heaven Dance Club above it on the east bank of the Flats.
Right. Okay, so and that's what I wanted to say, because Peabodys has moved. So
yeah,
this was when it was still in the Flats, when the which could I say the first version of the Flats, because now they redid the Flats.
Yeah,
so
it's a pretty
that
wild
building
story
doesn't
right
even
there.
exist anymore, right? So.
Oh, it doesn't. It doesn't exist anymore. No, there's the other Peabodys building either now. Right. Now that's the Health Services of Cleveland State University.
That's right.
Yeah.
So when you it was down in the Flats. So well I actually want to go back. So when you were growing up in Aurora, were you into music in the local scene or anything like that, or?
So my brother's nickname was Jammin' John.
Okay.
So similar to like all these cushions on the wall with the studio and everything, we had that with carpet, and we had egg cartons on the ceiling.
Okay.
And there was band practice 3 or 4 nights a week at my house.
Yeah.
And it could only go till 10 o'clock because the neighbors didn't like it very much. And we didn't even live close to the neighbors. It's just that's why they called them Jammin' John. It was like Richard Patrick from Filter.
Yeah.
That he was in his band growing up in high school. Like the band was called The Act. That was my first band I've ever seen. It was actually at Peabody's in 1988.
Okay.
That was the first show I ever saw in my life. Yeah. I was 9 years old at the time. Yeah. And but my brother was always around the business. Actually, I was an athlete. I was captain of the football team, the baseball team, the wrestling team. I was all conference in all three. I was always into sports.
So you weren't just like some slacker artist musician. You were actually like
I've always been a part of the business. Even actually owning Peabodys, to be frank, the reason I was such a good talent buyer, I'm a numeric genius.
Okay.
That's my God-given gift. Like I look at a number and I have like a photographic memory when it comes to numbers, but not words. Like I don't have like a photographic memory with looking at photos, just numeric. Numeric. Like I have my friends from high school's phone numbers still memorized to this day. All my bank account numbers memorized. All my like Social Security, my kids' Social Security numbers, like my wife's, my brother's, all that type of stuff because we're partners. All that type of it's just weird logistics that I have down. But that was my gift at Peabody's, was I would look at Polestar and look at all the reporting, and I could memorize all the numbers, and I could even memorize what I paid everybody too.
Wow.
And when I did the offers, I could actually do them verbally. I could break down how much the guarantee was, my nut of the 2,000, give them the 15% promoter profit, and I could do my split points right on the wing as talking to the agent because I could know numbers that well.
Okay.
So that was one of the things that I did really well. One of the things I also learned from, actually it was Frank Riley from High Road Touring. He asked me about the band Sunvolt when I just started, and I was honest. I was like, no, I never heard of them.
Yeah.
Ironically, this is like I've been doing this now for 25 years, but it was about 10 years into the business. I was hanging out with Frank Riley, watching Sunvolt at South by Southwest, and I told him the story when I was a rookie, and then I told you the truth, and then I learned you always at least got to tell them, oh, yeah, let me look into it. Yeah, you know, that you've at least heard, because you can't, this is their baby that they're trying to sell you.
Sure.
And you're like, nah, never heard of you. You know what I mean? So it's almost, to almost be polite, you almost have to. You've heard of everybody,
right?
You know, at least a little bit as a talent buyer.
So,
and those are just the lessons that I learned throughout doing this.
Well, so you said did that, like, being good with numbers, was that something you learned in school? Did you go through college? I mean, what was it? Or was it early age stuff?
My dad died when I was 1. And he's taught me a couple things.
Okay.
Tomorrow's not promised.
Right.
Life's not always fair. And what's the other one? Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
One thing I taught myself is happiness comes from within.
Sure.
And also every healthy day above the ground is a great day.
That's right.
Those are the things I live by. And my dad gave me a God-given gift. He was just really good with numbers. Like when I was a kid, I was in my own math class. You know, you take those tests and you know the speed tests and who can beat who.
Yeah.
I beat everybody so bad that I only pressed against the teacher. I was against the teacher in my own math class from 2nd to like 5th grade. I was in my own class. Like I had really smart kids that were way smarter than me and everything else, but in math, it's a God-given gift.
Okay. So, I mean, how far did you go with that? Did you, did you go into business, like school, or, I mean...
You know what? To be honest, I really always thought when I was at school, I was there to be there for sports.
Oh, is that
I
what
really
it is?
did.
Yeah.
And even my senior year, I didn't even take math because I didn't need it anymore.
Right.
So I would have, because I realized I just paid for it the following year. You live and you learn, you know what I mean? When I was 19 years old, I thought I knew everything in the world. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just
Didn't we all?
Exactly. So that I was a know-it-all that didn't realize I was about to pay for the same class I could have took for free as a senior. Yeah. You know what I mean? You live and you learn. So as far as math goes, you know, I was always told by like one of my stepdads, he's like, man, you should be a bank teller. Man, you're really good with counting, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. That's probably why I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm in real estate. I have my ticketing company called EventWorks.
Okay.
I still do concerts with EventWorks still. We still do it all over in all the different venues in Cleveland. Mostly our hub right now is the Odeon. That's where we're doing most of our shows at, but we're doing them all over the place. I just booked one yesterday at the Winchester, for instance, for December 3rd for Young Cap to play with a live band, kind of like MGK is doing with the live band.
Yeah.
He's going to have a live band. A couple of the other hip-hop guys that he works with are going to have the live band, and they're all doing like a rock show at the Winchester, so that's going to be really cool. But yeah, I just kind of like... I just enjoy being in business because I know numbers, but at the end of the day, it's nothing I've gone crazy with it. It's just it's something that's helped me be an entrepreneur my whole life.
Well, let's go on. So you said your brother owned Peabodys? Is that what happened?
Yeah, from 1995 to 2000.
So how did he end up getting into that?
Wow, that's a great question. So basically, it's an incredible question.
Yeah.
My next door neighbor, Dan Bliss, who was also... His father was my wrestling coach, and he's in the Hall of Fame for coaching in Aurora for 55 years. He, and still to actually how I have my security job, who was their consultant. He's the guy that got me the job there. He lives in Henderson, is actually business partner with my boss.
Vegas?
In Vegas.
Yeah.
Was in Los Angeles, just recently moved to Henderson. But though they were business partners, Dan was the savvy one, like business-wise, like understood... Like still to this day, he owned a business called Perfect Business. He puts together huge $70 million real estate deals and gets paid, a $300,000 consulting fee to do that. He's a genius. He's like literally a genius. The kid had 3 majors in 4 years at Ohio State, over 4.0 GPA. The kid's a genius.
Wow.
He owned Peabodys before. He went through owning Peabodys with ever not even having a sip of alcohol. The whole time he owned Peabodys, he never had a sip of alcohol. He drinks wine now.
Sure.
But the whole time, like, wow. Yeah. Talk about self-control.
Sure.
So the point is that so he was the one that put together the decks and raising the money. My brother was the creative one behind the scenes that understood the music business. Okay. And he's the one that invented all the Battle of the Bands, time slots based on ticket sales, bands selling tickets to begin with, That all started from his band in 1988.
Okay.
He rented out the room, and that's what it was all about. Actually, if we could just get bands to rent out the room, they'd never have to all sell tickets. We'd rather just have them all rent out the room.
Right.
We don't want to have to call them every week to see if they're selling the tickets. That's just fucking pain in the ass.
Right.
We couldn't teach them all to be business people and put on their own shows like my brother did. Not every band. I did teach a lot of bands how to do it, though. There were a lot of bands. There was Gatlin used to do it.
Okay.
They used to rent out the room. That's actually kind of how hardcore marketing started. Okay. Was he was their manager for a while, and I taught him how to put on shows.
Right.
So he could do it. And he also sponsored my cigarettes. He gave me $30,000 a year with Winston. And I was like, dude, you're giving me $30,000 a year with Winston. I'll teach you anything the hell you want to know.
So he would just buy, he would buy you cigarettes, or?
No. Every cigarette company would sponsor the companies. Like, so I don't smoke cigarettes.
Right.
The only time I ever smoked a cigarette was at Peabodys at like 12:01 at night when it became illegal to smoke a cigarette in my bar because I owned the bar and I didn't smoke, but I thought it was my right to have people smoke cigarettes in the bar. I thought, especially when it's sponsored by a company that gives us half our profit for the year. We make $60,000 a year. $30,000 of it comes from the cigarette sponsor.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Are you kidding me? You're taking half my profit. Yeah. So I was pretty upset, and I smoked a cigarette at 12:01 because I was thinking to myself also, wow, thanks for cutting my business in half.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Literally, it cut it in half because they would give us money for putting on David Allen Co. shows. They'd pay David Allen Co. money.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? And we would have to be a 21 and over show, but like 6 people under the age of 21 go to a David Allen Co. show.
Right.
It lost me like $60 to take in all $10,000 at a time.
Yeah,
you do 3 shows like that a year, that's $30,000 of profit.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it was just, and they would pay for all of it, is my point. You had a $30,000 of cash that you could use of their money.
Sure.
To pay your bills. You see what I'm saying? It was a great deal. So that's the point of that whole thing, and that's how that whole hardcore marketing thing got started, was because of that. The reason the bands, remember, like mass amount of bands, instead of having 3 or 4 bands,
right?
Instead of having the bands like make them sell 50 tickets for a show because you had to pay the band, the headliner, and you had to pay for the show that night. That's the invention that I came up with, where I started bringing, I'm not going to make you sell 50 tickets, but we're going to have 8 bands on the show tonight instead of 4. And then somebody's going to sell 75, somebody's going to sell 5, and a bunch are going to sell 25 and 30 and 2. You know what I mean? It's all going to average out.
That was when it was still in the flats.
No, actually, kind of. I started doing a couple shows like that in the flats because I used that outdoor stage. I remember doing a radio station for a Cleveland State radio station, and one time the whole place flooded, and all 13 bands on the show helped me. There was people literally surfing down the east bank of the flats, and all 13 band members helped me squeegee the place out and go nuts with it, and literally just squeeze you all. There was like a foot, like our amps were underwater.
Yeah.
All the bands got it out. We ran the show like 45 minutes late. The show went on. All the bands played. We had like over 600 people show up. It was incredible, and it was like a team effort. I remember even taking all the free times and scenes and throwing them on the ground to soak up all the water and shoveling them into garbage cans. And all the bands helped too.
Yeah.
We had like 40 people helping, man. It was awesome.
So, well, I have a few questions, but... Well, I have more than a few, but okay, let's just stay on that ticket thing for instance. Go
ahead.
I know like a lot of bands kind of like, I remember actually being in a band, and
I love discussing the ticket thing.
Yeah.
I love discussing
and I remember coming to you and I was like, how do we get out of this ticket selling thing, whatever? And you explained to me actually, like, not condescendingly at all. It's like, hey, I understand you're an artist. That's what you want to do. If you want to play music, that's fine. But if you want to play in a bar, bar's there to make money, And, and something in that, I was like, you know what? You explained it in a non-condescending, just common sense way that I was like, you know what? It actually makes a lot of sense to do that, because...
There's 2 parts to that.
Yeah.
I hope this is what you're getting at. I'm hoping I'm getting it. The original and cover bands. So original music, or especially cover band music, they ask you specifically to play this music. They want you to play for their clientele, and they have this specific, you have to entertain them.
Right.
You deserve an X amount of money for entertaining them.
Right.
But in original music, nobody in that club knows your music other than the people that you bring to that club.
Right.
And the reason that big groups sell tickets is because, especially nowadays with social media sites and the internet, you're not going to give your cell phone contacts out to the promoter.
Right.
But if he goes to the mall and tries to sell, one of my favorite bands in Cleveland history is Second Half. If I went to the mall right now and said there's a reunion in Second Half, everybody's like, who the fuck is Second Half? You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to sell any. But if I went into social media, into the certain Facebook groups, or getting the Second Half's Facebook fans or use their contacts, I'd sell a shit ton of reunion tickets. Because you got to get to their particular niche.
Right.
One of the reasons I did the EventWorks thing is I'm literally trying
And this is internet and everything too. So
well, this is when I first started doing it. We actually used to do an out of town show. You had to have a pager with that area code because there was long distance. People couldn't call you back.
Right.
This was prior to the internet.
Young kids don't understand that, right?
Yeah, you literally. This was all flyer based. You would literally do flyers and print ads.
Yeah.
Those are the only two way to advertise back in the day.
Yeah.
And you had to do that, and then they would call the number, and then we'd call and book them. As soon as they called the number and left with a voicemail or whatever, then we'd call back and say, okay, guys, here's all the details on the show, and here's how it all works. The Battle of the Bands was literally used it as a minor leagues to develop the next local band headliner.
Right.
The very first Battle of the Band winner that my brother ever had was the band Chimera. That was the first Battle of the Bands winner ever.
That's
that was the first one because every great band, just like when I did the first DJ one, I forget who the first DJ Battle of the Band was. I bet you it was Tic Tac though. But my point is he's amazing. When we did the DJ Battle of the Fans, when I copied it, and instead, because DJs weren't good at selling tickets, right?
Yeah.
But they had huge drinking crowds.
There's less of them, right?
Yeah, there's less of them. But I gave them tickets to hand out instead.
Right.
And I'd even pay them a buck a ticket for every ticket that brought in. Okay. There was an underage fee if the person was under 21. It was a $5 underage fee, so now we already made $4 on that deal, right?
Right.
And we made the drinking money if they're over 21. And then the bar would pack it in, and then we would do a different thing. So, time slots are still based on ticket sales. So instead, it'd be from 8 to 9 o'clock. I would DJ from 8 to 9, and then at 9 o'clock, we'd count all the tickets that came in the door. Yeah. Whoever had the most tickets in played last. So guess what also happens? Whoever has the most people there, they're going to stay the longest to drink.
Right.
Once again, being in the business aspect.
Yeah.
So you always had to think that way to doing it. And, that the other part of the sincere part, I guess I was probably bringing up to you is just that at the end of the day, if this is what you want to do with your life, you need to be a part of it. You know what I mean? Don't expect somebody else to sell you.
I agree.
We can give you the canvas, but you're going to have to paint it.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's what Peabody's is, and that's what every venue is. Yeah. And that's what every promoter nowadays is, too, to be frank. That's what the purpose of my EventWorks is to literally have bands run out the room like they should be anyways.
Sure.
You don't need promoters. In my ticketing site charges $1 ticketing fee, does the time slots based on ticket sales in real time, and does follow-ups for you to make sure the bands are selling the tickets.
Yeah.
And you can put on your own shows, and it will even give you the venues to do it and help you negotiate your deals.
Right. Yeah.
It even now is going to eventually, the next feature is going to have contracts, so it does the payout to the band, the artist, and the venue at 12:01. It PayPal's everybody.
Yeah.
They're cut based on what you agree upon.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that kind of came from that, and I think it was just a byproduct of that, was the community that it kind of created, like having all those bands, like 8 bands, and then you guys, once it was over at CSU, you had the Pirates Cove, you had multiple rooms, you had upstairs.
Rockstar. We had sometimes 21 bands playing.
Yeah, right.
Hip-hop, I think the most we ever did was Afro Man, I believe. It was an Afro Man show. I think we had like 110 artists.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had like 110 one night.
Well, and that's the thing. Those are all people.
We might have used a fourth stage, though. We might have used the green room. We might have went 4 stages.
Oh, that's right. The one over by the offices over there.
Yeah, the one by the office. We did that every once in a while for the Cleveland Music Fest. One time, JC from Dead Even, he headlined for me in the pizza stage, we called it. We put one in the Rascal House. And I had an article written about me that said, this man would put a band in the bathroom if they didn't sell enough tickets.
But as I was saying, like the community, because you get all those
bands
together.
That's not true. I wouldn't have done that, by the way. Unless it was Uncle Scratch's Gospel Revival.
Well,
because they wanted to.
Absolutely. That would be perfect for those guys, yeah.
We had them play by the bathrooms, by the way, once, because they actually asked to. And we're like, of course.
That's awesome. That's right up their alley.
It was fun.
But that's what I'm saying. Like the community, you think about as a band playing there, you just get to intermingle and meet all these other bands, and that kind of like creates a scene. And that's kind of what I was talking with Mark Sobere over at Rock and Roll City Studios. I think that's what he did, was you get all those bands in one building, and it kind of like, like the...
I completely agree with you.
Like the Seattle scene, like all those guys were kind of like intermingled. It was very incestuous,
City
stuff
Studios
like that.
For that reason, by the way, I used to always flyer that all the time there. Because of that reason. There's a community there. There really is.
Right.
That's the same thing Peabody's tried to do too with doing it, and that's one thing I actually thought of as I'm booking a show. I'm like, guys, why not put another band on? There's no way we won't be able to fit it, even if they don't sell a ticket. There's 4 more members drinking at the bar. We're going to give them $1 off a beer.
Right.
Like, we still make money on that. And they're going to play music.
Right.
So everybody's going to win here. We're going to have a big party, and let's do it.
Right. Yeah, and, once I started, like, putting together shows, I started realizing that, and a lot of bands, like I was saying, a lot of people, like, do expect, they don't want to do the work. They just think that their talent is going to take them everywhere, and somebody's going to find them, but that doesn't happen like that. You got to grind it out. You got to work.
My newest partner sells tickets himself. He just did the headlining show at the Odeon this weekend. We had a little over 400 people there. He sold 102 of them himself, literally. No, plus the general admission. Probably like 130 some were just him. And so he knows how to sell tickets. It's funny because I don't give groups a hard time when they don't sell any tickets, because sometimes you have a good night, sometimes you don't. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're all your friends are going somewhere, and but you still made the commitment. My buddy, because he's been there before, he expects people to bring at least 10, 20 people out to the shows, because he's like, dude, come on, what's wrong with you? What do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean? I've done it before with some artists that I booked, and I've promoted my own bands that cover bands that I was in, and at the end of the day, I know it is hard to sell tickets. It's not an easy feat.
Well,
like, I think the most I've ever sold is 32. I know, but I'm saying, like, most of the bands, they don't have I can sell Mushroomhead tickets at the mall. You know what I mean? Because everybody's heard of Mushroomhead.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's a phenomenon here in Cleveland. But, MGK, obviously, you know what I mean? I'll be honest, though, the Wolstein Center show, I'll give you an example. I was putting on those shows.
Yeah.
And... I had a guest list. I had a couple people I put on the guest list that came to my shows. Yeah. But once it got to the the Gun, which is now the Rocket Mortgage, and the Cleveland Browns Stadium.
Yeah.
Every one of my friends wanted to get on the guest list then, and that wasn't my show anymore. You know what I mean? It was too big now. So it's just funny, how that part of it works, is where it's when the artists when they get to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Then everybody comes out of the woodwork. You know what I mean? And it's easy as sliced bread to sell tickets. But when you're at a level of a local band or even a regional band, even if you're at an acoustic hookah level, you know what I mean? They're a national touring band.
Sure.
It's unless you're at a hippie festival, you know what I mean, or like a flea market that's based on that type of music, or a jam festival or something like that. Of course, everybody's going to know who they are. But if you just go to your regular bar, they're not going to know who they are. You know what I mean? So that's what makes it sell tickets. And the one I sold the most for was an artist I managed, and he was probably the best, still to this day, probably one of the best unsigned artists that didn't get a deal, right? Nobody knew who he was. You can't, you know what I mean? You just still can't, unless you have that branding recognition,
right? Or
they don't know. And even like me, for instance, I can explain it. Like I have a book called Rock Your City: 5 Steps to Becoming the Biggest Band in Town.
Okay.
And in part of the book, it tells people, don't say to people, I don't sound like anybody. I'm so unique, because that's the hardest way to even sell tickets ever.
Yeah,
what you want to say is, we've got a Madonna lead singer that sounds like Metallica, that's got the craziest light show with bitches dancing in cages. You know what I mean? That's how you're going to sell tickets, because it sounds like amazing and something I'd want to go to.
And there's something to reference, too.
Yeah, something to reference so they know what it's like.
Right.
Or tell them, like, Mushroomhead's an easy one, because literally you can say that one, even if they don't know who Mushroomhead is, my hardest job on that show is keeping the women's clothes on in the audience. That's my hardest job. Not selling the place out, but keeping the women's clothes on in the audience. We got to make sure they at least wear electrical tape.
Right.
And that's we have to do that. That's the hardest way to, I want to keep my liquor license, so that's the hardest part of a Mushroomhead job. So you say that, people want to go to that show.
Sure.
But selling tickets it's not easy. So there's an art to it. There's even an art to passing out flyers. Like, you got to go like this. You're going like this, and see how your eyes went down to my hand as I point down into the flyer. Because there's certain techniques to get people. And once you get one person grabbing the flyer, everybody's like sheep. Everybody grabs the flyer. As soon as somebody says no, you got to go back to the routine again, get somebody to say yes, and then the next 30 people are good to go again.
Right, because
you know what I mean?
Talent can only take you so far. I've seen a lot of great bands that really never did anything because they couldn't promote themselves, or they didn't know how or anything like that.
They need to hook up with a friend that can promote them. Even. They don't necessarily have to do it yourself.
Right.
Hook up with a best friend of yours that can help you.
Right.
Whoever talks the most.
That's right. So let's go back. So, all right. So Peabody's was down in the flats. And what was the reason for the move up to the CSU campus?
That show was, I think it was a Tuesday night. The band was Iced Earth.
Okay.
We lost a fortune. I think I booked that show with John Finberg, was the agent. But we lost a fortune on the show. It was like, I shouldn't say a fortune. No. We lost a couple grand. Okay. And but my brother walked in and said, "What pizza place opens up and loses $2,000 in a night?"
Yeah.
None.
Right.
None. Not one in the country opens up and loses $2,000 in a night. We're in the wrong business.
Yeah.
At least in the wrong location. Because at the end of the day, we could have opened up anything in that location, no matter what it was. You could have fucking sold dog shit out the door, and it would have sold. Because
was that the decline of the flats at the time?
So no. So that was the night of the opening of the new Peabodys. Literally the night, March 1st of 2000.
Okay.
Oh, was it 2001? Yeah, 2000. March 1st, 2000. Hold on. I remember Robert Waters, Blackwater Surprise. Anyways,
okay.
He was playing in Earth for the opening July 14th. That was, and the day before July 13th, we still had another show. I forget who I had. Might have even been Kamira. The second to last show at Peabody might have been Kamira, actually, on the back building. We ran shows on the backstage while doing the construction for Earth.
Right.
And so it was pretty wild. My point is to answer your question, so that doesn't sound weird. I kind of went off on a tangent there.
That's fine.
More or less is that Peabody's. Hold on.
And by the way, I love tangents because that means I don't have to talk as much then.
Okay, good. That's good. I'm trying. What was the question again?
Why was the move to CSU?
Okay, so Iced Earth. Tuesday night, we lose a couple $1,000. My brother comes in and says, "Hey, what pizza place opens up and loses $2,000?"
Right.
He goes, "We need to do another dance club and pronto, because obviously if we do a dance club, we'll do $10,000 at the bar every Friday and Saturday, just like Heaven's doing."
Right.
So we created Earth and Heaven. To be frank, it would have been better with just two separate locations because Heaven was just killing it. But they did have a stairwell in between.
Yeah.
So because then they had to close one of the two if they weren't busy. They could have just kept them separate, and that'd have been even better. But they moved Peabody's. We opened up. It went from July to March that there was no Peabody's at all. So from July 14th to March 1st, actually I did local concerts in different rooms like the Revolution, over at I forget what it was called. I think it was. What was it called? The Lemon something?
Oh, yeah, Blind Lemon.
The Blind Lemon?
Yeah.
The Blind Lemon.
Which is now like the Foundry.
Yeah, I did shows at the Fantasy. I did shows in Pittsburgh and in Cincinnati. And then we opened up the new Peabody's March 1st, and it was the Tony Lang Band was the opener. And that night was the day that East Bank of the Flats fell. They closed 8 clubs that night. My brother sold sold Earth and Heaven that night for $420,000.
Wow.
And the people backed out. The money was going, I know, but the money was going into escrow on that Monday. They backed out. He ended up selling it to the same people for $130,000, $390,000 less. Plus he had to put like $60,000 into the place.
What happened that night?
They had a pop in the ice tray, but the reason my brother won a lawsuit for $450,000 against the city was that he had a friend of his that worked for the company that boarded him up.
Yeah.
They got the order to board him up before the violation even happened. And we were under a temporary permit. The guy that closed us revoked his own signature. You can't revoke your own signature. We could have had all the problems in the world for another 14 days, and you still couldn't have closed us.
But I'm saying, I guess I don't know what happened that day that like 8 businesses.
So what really happened?
Yeah.
Because I understand it all. That what really happened.
Yeah.
Was at the time Michael White was the mayor.
Okay.
I believe a couple of the really rich family members. Most likely, Wolsteins. And who's part of it right now? Jacobs, and there might be one more that's a part of it. Definitely, I know Tim Spencer and the Flat Expo. I don't know what they had to do with it, but there was something in what they had to do with it. But essentially, they were trying to eminent domains everybody's business and bring down the value of their businesses so they could buy them all out. That's why it took an extra 6 years to start the whole project back up, so people didn't go to jail. That's why my brother lost the case, not because for losing the case, but because it was in the wrong court. It had to be in the Supreme Court because it was a constitutional right.
Really?
That was a conspiracy that happened in Cleveland, 100%. That happened. My family is part of it. The investors got paid from the negligence from the attorneys for putting it in the wrong court, but my brother won the case because building inspectors should have went to jail and everything because they were all in on it.
So basically, the collapse of the flats. I thought it.
The collapse of the flats was the city of Cleveland doing the wrong thing to private business owners.
Really?
Yep. That's what the collapse of the flats.
Wow. Okay.
That's what really actually happened.
I thought
my family was a part of it. We were the only ones that sued him and won.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought it was just like it was crime
not a real
was
estate
up,
time.
or
No.
people dying in the river.
Well, they
stuff like that.
They would have went to jail. If they would have just done it right away because they said you did this to make retail shops and to make Margaritavilles, and then they're like, we didn't do that. And guess what happened? Retail stores are Margaritavilles.
Oh, okay. So
they had to say we said, listen, what you're trying to do. You're trying to do this. And like, for instance, I'll give you a good example. Right now, finally, I don't even know if Mike T, the owner of the Odeon, if he's sold yet, but there's phase 3 plans. He's still the owner, and there's already plans out there for his property that he owns.
Wow.
And now his value, he just made it go up because he's like, well, you just giving me another $500,000.
Yeah.
Because now he wants more money because they have already advertised what they're doing with his property.
Wow.
That's my point. That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
That's the type of shit that they did, but they did it wrong 15 years ago.
Okay, so it basically just came down.
No, that was 22 years ago now.
Yeah.
Wow, so long ago.
Well,
statute of limitations, those people aren't in trouble anymore, so I can obviously tell the story.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't want to do too much editing here.
You can leave this. They can.
Yeah.
I feel bad for my brother that totally screwed. Actually, if my brother wouldn't have got totally screwed, I probably would have never been owning Peabodys, and I probably wouldn't be here doing this podcast either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go into that.
That's the silver lining.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
My brother took care of me and gave me an opportunity because the city screwed him and he had nothing. And basically, he owned the Euclid Tavern, he owned Peabodys, he owned Spot Magazine, he owned the barn. He had a huge empire built up, and it just all went because the city brought them all down.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
Well, yeah, because the Euclid Tavern was another one. That's another iconic Cleveland.
Yeah, my brother owned the building for that one too.
It's funny. So did a similar thing happen with that, or was it just
that was actually a deal that he had with Steve Spellman. It was a management thing that just I think a mismanagement thing that ended up going belly up.
Okay,
that's what happened with that one.
Okay, so you moved over to the CSU area, which I thought was a better venue. So it was almost like it was then down in the flats.
When I first started booking it, I used to say I eat off the floor for the first year.
Yeah.
Because hold on, so let me say it. Configured. How do you say that word?
Compared or no?
Configuratively speaking.
Configuratively
speaking. Hopefully, I said that right now. Between the old figurative. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll recap this.
Okay.
Figuratively speaking, between the old Peabodys and the new Peabodys, I would eat off the floor of the new Peabodys for at least the first year before we would do it because that's how much cleaner it was than the old Peabodys.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why.
And it was cool. And it was bigger. Obviously, you had more stages. You had the Pirates Cove, which was a throwback to an old Cleveland bar, right?
Biggest difference for us, business-wise, was because it was a circular bar.
Yeah.
We crushed it. Like the biggest bar in history was $6,000 at the old place. It was a David On Co show. The biggest bar.
You mean the bar sales?
Bar sales for a concert was like 18,000. So it was like triple the sales at the new Peabodys compared to the other Peabodys. And the biggest one was St. Patrick's Day, one of the years. We grossed between 32 to 42 every year, but one of the years we did 42,000 in sales on St. Patty's Day.
Oh, yeah, because you had the parade going right by
there. Yeah, it was wild. Yeah.
So it was actually...
We had the parade start and end at Peabody's for St. Patty's Day.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So...
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, you're fine. So, the collapse of the flats, I kind of like saying it now because it kind of has a rhyme to it, but, like... That was a blessing in disguise because, I mean, did the newer Peabodys, you were profitable, obviously, right? I mean, it definitely was culturally, it was a great thing for the music community. I made it very profitable.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you too.
No, you're fine.
I made it profitable because I had relationships. Like my brother, when he started Peabody's, his biggest promoter was Michael Belkin, and he went to the Odeon like 30 days later and started competition with him. You know what I mean? So that was his biggest promoter that he was sold. You know what I mean? And it went from he went losing money immediately. And when I took over, it was different. Like I was the general manager already for 2 years, and when I bought the place, I bought all my shows that were on the books that I knew I was making money on, and I came up with a theory of having gazillion bands on every stage to make sure I never lost.
Right.
Sometimes at national bands back in the day, you lose and win. Like House of Blues considers 30% wins a success. 30%. They can because of all the merch sales and and all the what do you call it? Alcohol sales and all the different the restaurant sales and everything. 30% shows that's good. At Peabody's back in the day, we were probably like 60-40. You know what I mean?
Right.
Back in the day, once we added more groups, I was like 95-5. 5% of the time, I lost money on nationals because I didn't take a chance.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And the nice thing about it too is I never had to scratch anything out on riders because I was like, hey, you want the good news or the bad news?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, well, the bad. I'm like, well, the bad news is we're going to have more openers than you're used to. And he's like, okay, well, what's the good news? Well, I'm not scratching anything out of your rider. You're probably going to hit bonus points tonight, and you're going to have one hell of a Polestar report.
Right.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
I had one band out of all of them tell me no, out of all the times. I closed the curtains, didn't let any of the people that sold those tickets, gave people free beer that bought the local band tickets, and if they wanted to buy a ticket, what did I do? I sold it to them for like half off or something because I could.
Yeah.
Because it was like a thing, and what we did was they didn't count any of the sales. People didn't even go into the national band. They wanted to see their local band.
Right.
Nobody came in to see their show.
Right.
Their sales were shit.
Right.
And we had a huge local show in the Pirates Cove.
Yeah.
And everybody got free beer. So I was like, fuck you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? At the end of the day, he didn't play along, and they were one band that didn't do it with me, and they were like, whoa, 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 and went crying with their tails between their legs home. Because it's like, come on, dude, I have a system here. And if you don't like my system, it's cool, but that's got a separate address, a separate website, a separate print ad, a separate sound system, separate lights. We have everything separated. So it's separate entrance, separate exit. If you don't want their sales, that's fine. If you don't want their merch sales and all their numbers and all the money that comes with your report to go with it. And by the way, I'm scratching this out of your rider and this out of your rider and this out of your rider because that's what your real budget is. Sorry.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you don't want to say what that band was, do you?
To be honest with you, it was a German metal band. That's all I remember. I remember that. And I couldn't tell you the band name because, to be honest with you, I don't remember the bad guys. I don't remember the good guys.
So now this business model, was this something that you got an idea of somewhere else in another state or another country or anything like that? Or you think that was something that was unique to Cleveland? Or
it was unique to me.
Okay.
It's literally nobody else did it but me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And now other people have done it that have worked for me. But unless you've worked for me or you're me, you don't do this. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah,
you know what I mean? But I've had hundreds and hundreds of people work for me.
Yeah.
So there are people that do this thing, and I've also done this in 85 different cities too.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, I've done this system in 85 different cities and 150 different clubs, and at one time I had 140 part-time people and 24 full-time people working on events. That's why I've done 15,000 shows.
Wow.
Yeah, 10,000 of those were just with Gorilla.
Okay.
You know.
Oh, so let's get into guerrilla production. So like, so was that while you were doing the Peabodys, or was that just after?
Right after I sold.
So why did you sell?
Chris and Derek.
Chris Zederberg.
I sold for many reasons. One of the reasons I sold was I knew one day I wanted a family.
Okay.
And the end game, I was going to have to sell Peabodys one day at one point. That was one of the things in my mind. Another thing in my mind, J-Man from Mushroomhead, Jason Popson was a good friend of mine. We actually did a studio after that too. But he wasn't in the band anymore. And I was like, shit. That he was like the face of the band.
Right.
And I was like, shit, I put a lot of effort and time and a lot of eggs in that basket. So they were at the Wolstein Center one day, or, you know what I mean? I thought they'd be like, well, to be frank with you, they should be bigger than Slipknot, but that's another story. The thing is that so I put a lot of eggs in that basket. So I was concerned by that, but didn't have like a major factor, but it was a concern. I don't even know why I brought that up second. It should have brought it up 10th. Yeah. But one of the other things, this was probably first and foremost, but I kind of weird saying this because it's technically you're not really supposed to do this. Yeah. But I was being sued for $5 million because somebody killed somebody leaving Peabody's.
Oh, really?
And I just wanted to make sure my investors were taken care of and I could sell the business. It was actually a faux pas, I guess you'd call it. It's not really illegal, but you really shouldn't have done it. The reason it was more of a faux pas than illegal is because I already had a settlement, but the case hadn't been done yet. Okay. So it was one of those things that I was like, I had been through 9 lawsuits in 5 years. Not one of them were my fault. Right. You know, people punching somebody in the head, suing me for downtown security. Well, I'm the guy that gets the guy, literally myself personally, get the guy arrested, get the guy's wallet back, gets his chain back, gets the guy to serve 6 years in prison, and I don't have enough security. And we took care of him perfectly. Wow. But I still got, now granted, I won that lawsuit. Okay, good. But still, it cost me $3,000 to win that lawsuit. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it happens over and over again. So you're like, then... This one's a wild one, but the admissions taxes in cities, that's pretty wild as well. Yeah. Chris had to go through a battle with that afterwards. I had paid some of it, but it was just weird in general. That whole thing, you just always have a lingering huge fee over your head with the whole admissions taxes.
And you say Chris.
Well, with that Peabody's, fucking the Beachland, Peabody's, everybody but Kathy, because she's in Cleveland Heights and it's a made-up, fixed, fictitious tax.
But are you talking about Chris Zederberg that bought Peabody's?
Yeah, Chris Zederberg. Okay. Yeah, when I say Chris, it's just Chris Zederberg. Yeah. But that's like a made-up admissions tax that, thank God, Cindy has made it where they can't come after you personally, like you can payroll taxes. So eventually one day, Beachland will just owe $1 gazillion and it'll go away because... You know what I mean? Like either the beach will go away, somebody they'll pass away, or whatever happens. You know what I mean? Eventually, everyone does. You know what I mean? Right. So eventually, it will go away. And thank God she did that because it's not right. Because if you go to other cities, the only city that's like that is Seattle. Seattle and Cleveland, which are great music towns. Right. Fuck the musicians, and the reason it's so fucked is because we are paying for. Originally, it was Gateway, but essentially the Indians, the Browns, and the Cavs, which are direct competition with us. Right. People only have so much money for entertainment dollars. It might be sports and music, but sports is in competition with music. Right. Like you try to book a concert during an Indians playoff game. Right. The whole time my brother owned the Peabodys, this is how unlucky he was. The Indians made the playoffs every year. Every year I owned Peabodys, the Indians never made the playoffs. Yeah. Yeah, so that's good for you, right?
It
was great for me. Yeah, right. I had Rocktober because they're called Rocktober. Yeah, but if your baseball team goes to the playoffs, consider all your shows failures. Every one of them. They're all gonna suck, and you're gonna have to call and hope you have good relationships.
So, all right. So let's go in this real quick. So you ended up selling Peabodys, and then you were like, well, I still kind of want to do this thing, guerrilla production. So then it kind of opens up a bunch of different venues for you, right? I mean,
yeah. So in hindsight, I actually, to be honest, I wish I would have sold Peabody's because the IRS made more money than I did. The way I sold it was it's called an asset sale, but I had already depreciated everything for 5 years, so I had to reappreciate it. I didn't understand that, even though I paid my accountant or my attorney $7,000 to close this. Yeah, he didn't tell me that, which is. Why did you get paid is beyond me because that's the only part that mattered. Right. The IRS literally made more money than me, so I'd have been better off keeping it and having anybody in the world book the shows there and me just give them a little bit of my pinky nail of knowledge,
right.
and it would have made me more money in the future. And it could have been like a headquarters for Gorilla, which would have been incredible. Chris Z was incredible to me, so we still did the Battle of the Bands, and it still was our headquarters.
Yeah.
But I mean, we could have made it. Well, I could have had instead of having a place in Ohio City, I could have had the 24 full-time people.
Cleveland Music Festival.
Yeah. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I could have had all that at Peabody instead of in Ohio City with all the people working and everything.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that could have been the hub. In hindsight, I'd have loved that. Who knows though, because everything happens for a reason, like I said earlier.
Sure.
And look, COVID. I would have stayed independent. I don't think I'd ever sold out. And thank God Chris Z did sell to AEG and was partnered with them, because he'd have never made it. There's not a fucking chance he would have. So thank God. And you have to go through COVID. You almost had to be. And some of the strong independents did, but they must have been real strong personally prior to that, because it was one hell of a thing to probably get through all that independently. Mm-hmm. However, like I said, with the Peabodys thing, just the transition, it was just it was the right thing to do, because I just still to this day, that's why I do EventWorks. It's a passion for me. It'll be a huge moneymaker one day from EventWorks, because I'm building it. It's like one of those things that you build it, you slowly build it, and it's residual type of thing. So it builds up, builds up, builds up. So the longer I work, took it 4.5 years to get my patent, for instance. Okay. And this has been going around.
What's it a patent for?
It's a patent for time slots are based on ticket sales. So I now own time slots based on ticket sales electronically. Yeah. So I've done it 15,000 times manually and gave it to the world.
Right.
Electronically, I own it now. For comedians, fighters, magicians, musicians, anything anybody that performs and the time slots are based on that, I own that electronically. Yeah. So that was the patent that I got. That and an individual link for artists. So now when Dope plays with Mushroomhead, Dope gets credit and Mushroomhead gets credit, not just Mushroomhead. So before only the headliner got credit and they were the support act. Now each support act, every show for locals and regionals and for nationals, but I can now do individual links for every artist that performs on the show. And my hopes eventually is to be the regional and local Polestar reporting for all local and regional bands around the country.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So right now I've got 500 in the database for Cleveland, and we work with every venue. Now I'm starting in Columbus, then I'm going to do Cincinnati, and we're going to do 6 cities in Ohio, and then move on to the next state. And so
interesting. Wow, that's huge.
Yeah. But we have to do each. It takes a while to build up each city. Yeah. Because before, when I owned Gorilla, because I had a huge infrastructure. If I had this going when I had Gorilla, this website would be worth $15 million already. Yeah. But I don't. Gorilla was one hell of an infrastructure thing. It took me 70 hours. People didn't know, but I was working 70, 80 hours a week. Yeah. And the first 26 weeks that I owned Gorilla, I was in a different city 25 out of those 26 weeks. Wow. So I had to train people in all these different cities. You know what I mean? So I was traveling all over the world like crazy.
Now, you had Garage Bar too, right? Or was that...
No, so I did Redstone.
Okay.
Redstone and Battery Park. I did that for a year. We had like the Derek Hess menu and everything. Yeah. But Josh Cabot was my partner with that. Okay. And he was the chef, and he wanted to sell like cow tongue and cook like Michael Simon, because that's who he worked with for 4 years. Yeah. And I was like, man, I want to sell hot dogs and fried chicken wings, and right. I don't want my food cost to be 110%. Our alcohol sales are great. I'm a business guy, like you always know. Right. He's an artist, so but we're best friends. So we collided a little bit, and I was like, hey, just pay me out of the business. Me and my brother took a buyout. Okay. And then he became partnered. Well, we were already partnered with Tyler from MVP Parking.
And this was
but then Fabio
Gorilla or
no, this is Redstone. It's a restaurant.
Redstone. Oh, I'm sorry.
And then Fabio bought in with Tommy Nealon, and then eventually the Georges bought in once Tyler was out and everything else. But my part, Josh got bought out eventually as well, and that's when he started Cleveland Pickle. Okay. Yeah, the whole Cleveland Pickle thing. So
I'm not aware of the.
Yeah. So the Cleveland Pickle, they're like at Heinen's and Giant Eagles and all that stores. Okay. He just did a deal with U.S. Foods and took like $50,000 in retails for the pickles to like $500,000 in pickles a year. And he shut down. He used to sell them at the Indians games in Lakewood and on East 9th and Euclid, but he shut down all the sandwich shops because pickles were making more money.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. So now, would you say like owning having like a venue and a bar and everything, I mean, the profitability, I mean, it's a struggle, right? I mean, it's not like an easy thing to just...
Struggle is an understatement. Yeah. Struggle is an understatement. So to be real clear, mostly when you own a bar or you own a dance club, you build each night. Like EventWorks, I'm building it up. Yeah. So let's say you have a really popular Monday night. you're gonna be busy all the freaking time because you're busy on a Monday, you know. And you can build like a house night, like Friday night, like, okay, we're gonna have indie rock night, Thursday night trivia night, Wednesday night this night. So I try to build some of that into Peabody's by doing the Tuesday night, 80s night, doing the 90s night up in Rockstar.
Yeah, I remember that.
So we had the college ID night. We built a couple of those, and for a while I did a hip hop night. We built those up because it took so much weight off of my shoulders.
Yeah.
Because at a concert club, every single night you start brand new over again. Like if you don't advertise to anybody, like the Grog Shop's a good example.
Yeah.
If she doesn't advertise to anybody, she will have some people show up because it's the Grog Shop. She's built one hell of a. She has like the coolest thing going on in Cleveland ever but she worked really hard, and to be honest, I can say she's the only person I know for sure that has always been better at the job than me. I'm being serious. She's always been incredible. Her relationships are out of this world. Every agent loves her. All the bands love her. The city loves her.
Yeah.
Everybody loves Kathy.
Nice.
And she's just really good at it. But if she doesn't even advertise, she'll have 12 or 15 people walk in the door just because it's the Grog Shop. At Peabody's, we would literally have, I think in the whole 5 years I owned the place, I had 2 people I remember walking in going, who's playing tonight? All right, here's $15 and walked in, or $10, whatever it was, and walked in.
Yeah.
We didn't get walk-ups from just doing, on the East Bank of the Flats we did every once in a while because it was the East Bank of the Flats, but on 21st and Euclid, people were coming. It was a destination location for the band.
Right.
So, every single night, you're advertising. The only people that come are for those bands. Nobody else is coming to the show. House of Blues is another good example. They have a little bit of a built-in audience, but they're also spending $26 million on their venue. You know what I mean? Of course you're going to have a built-in audience if you have $26 million to spend on your venue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what did Peabody sell for? $250? I sold it for $250,000. $26 million, $250,000.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's about the band. It's a DIY type of place. You know what I mean? And you have to build it up every single night, unless you build like a. That's one of the reasons why in New York they have the resident bands. Like they play every 2 weeks type of thing.
Right.
And they have those people build up their nights because it's so labor intensive to book every night. People didn't understand at Peabody's how labor intensive. Like I had one hell of a staff. Like I had my own like guy that was my assistant that would help me book the shows. Mm-hmm. I had my ticket taker that was just recently ran the Odeon. I had my guy that did the Battle of the Bands. Then I literally had, like in an intern, and then like I'd either have like somebody that was like a niche person that was either like a juggalo person that kind of helped out everywhere, or like a metalhead that helped out everywhere.
Right.
But I had somebody of like one of our punk person, like one of our specific niches that we did.
Yeah.
They knew it like you wouldn't believe, but they also would help out with other administration things. But we always had niche people. Like every single niche there is in Cleveland, I had a specific promoter that helped me with that show.
That's really
because
cool,
there's that much work that goes into everything that goes into a show.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So you have to realize, and once you get to break even point, the more hours you put into that show, the more money you're going to make now because you've already got to break even. So that's all pure profit now.
Right.
So you got to work even harder once you get to break even point because now you're going to finally make money. And like, for instance, I'll give you a good example. At Peabody's, I needed to make $35,000 a month. Net, not gross.
Right.
I needed to net. So that means that I probably needed to gross over $100,000.
Right.
To net the 35 that I needed to make to pay my bills each month.
Wow.
Yeah, my fixed operational costs at Peabody's were $35,000 a month.
Jeez.
And now people don't realize that. They think, I'm coming home with just barrels of money. You know what I mean? I was lucky to get home because I was so drunk. That's the only truth. You know what I mean? And I was lucky enough to do that because we had a great, successful business. I hired Bevco once, and Bevco came in and weighed everything up. And they're like, we got really good news for you. Your bartenders aren't stealing, but you and your partner are drinking yourselves like you wouldn't believe.
Oh,
like
is that right?
You are the one stealing from yourselves. And I was like, thank you, you're fired. And because why would I need them? Like, I'm stealing from myself. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
But that was really my pay, was being my real pay of owning Peabody's, because I made a lot more money as soon as I sold Peabody's.
Yeah.
My real pay at Peabody's, well, there was two things. One, everybody thought I was a millionaire, which was cool, especially when you're 23 years old and everybody thinks you're a millionaire.
But you go into that bar, and I mean, it is very successful. And like I said, it was a big part of the Cleveland music scene and the culture and everything.
So there was
So you would think that
clout.
Yeah.
There was some everywhere I went, I got it
Yeah.
for free. Like
Right.
I got walked into the Cavs finals game once
Right.
by the security. You know what I
Right.
mean? So like at the end of the day, there was some clout.
Yeah.
Everybody thought you're a millionaire, but at the end of the day, as far as money wise go, it was the opposite of what everybody entailed.
That's unfortunate, you know, because you would want something like that. Something as important.
Well, that's why you got
to
go support the Beachland right now. They need our help. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, I know Kathy's successful, but I just told you we were I was the concert club of the year in 2005 and barely able to pay my bills. So, you know, like the Garage Bar, for instance, what we thought I was a part of that.
Yeah.
Jeff Allison, he was the most successful bar in the heyday, in their fucking heyday. He was only making $120,000. Now, granted, they made tips because him and Ursula would bartend and all that.
Right.
But they were only making $120,000, and that place was packed.
Right.
So the only ones I can think of that made real money. The Basement, back in the day in the East Bank of the Flats, Gary Bauer made a shit ton.
Why?
They literally just made that much money 7 days a week.
Right?
That much money 7 days a week. Shooters was another one. Roger made a fortune. I don't know if he's still there.
Still there.
It's still there, but not like you're not printing money like you used to.
Yeah.
But Shooters in the Basement. And I'm trying to think if there's any other ones. Yeah, like
any of the Bobby George things, or
I'm sure Town Hall is doing well.
Yeah.
I'm sure Barley House probably makes money.
Yeah,
but Town Hall is probably doing well. They're busy 7 days a week, so I can see them doing well. I know Club 27's doing phenomenal.
Yeah,
Machine Gun Kelly's place. My buddy,
I don't know.
My business partner is the general manager there.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
where's that at?
That's right in the East Bank of the Flats, right behind the Odeon. And it's called Club 2. He does like coffee. They do mixed drinks now. They do amazing, weird food. Like I'm not into like crazy artistic food, and every time I've eaten their artistic food, it's really good.
Oh, good.
Every time. And I've had some wild, weird drinks that are like super good for good for you.
Yeah.
And they were awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing over there.
Okay, so let's go. Well, I know you're on a time thing, so I just kind of want to get into like what were some of the bands that kind of impressed you when you were doing the whole Peabodys thing? I mean, obviously you got your Mushroom Head, and you know, but
my favorite guy to work with was Mike Patton, just because he would literally load his own gear in. He would settle his own show and things like that. So that was
Mike Patton.
Yeah, he was really cool.
Like from
Secret Chiefs 3, Mr. Bungle, Phantom Moss.
Really?
Yeah. He was just
Faith No More.
Yeah, exactly. So he was awesome to work with. What's the word for it? That was one of the cool, like if you're talking about favorites type of people, just because of the person. Right. He was really cool. It was just really cool. As far as like just cool shows that I remember back in the day, like I remember telling Joe Reed once that I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, this band's gonna do this. He's like, dude, this band sucks. I just listened to him. I'm like, dude, this band's called My Chemical Romance. My buddy put a bunch of money into them. I'm sure they're gonna be good.
Yeah.
And he was running the Pirates Cove for me. I even let him book the shows, even though I booked all the shows.
Right.
I let him kind of book those shows. He was our manager, but I let him because he knew that niche of the Pirates Cove niche. He's helped us do the '80s night and all that stuff and everything. He did all the Only Undies nights and all that too. Okay. But I'm like, dude, we got to do this band. I'm like, trust me. And that was probably the biggest show we ever booked at Pirates Cove.
Okay.
So My Chemical Romance, that was really cool.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, in the Pirates Cove, too. Not at Peabodys, but in the Cove. So that was cool. I remember doing Good Charlotte for, like, Halloween and literally bouncing myself. And because me and my partner want to do it, so we threw all the kids off the stage. We were the ones that did it because we're like, this is awesome. Or, like, when Belly Dance Superstars would come, I would be the roadie. I'd be the runner myself. Or when Slash's Snake Pit was there, I went bar hopping with Slash. I was probably one of the last people he drank with. Because it literally said no alcohol on the thing. And I was like, it's Slash and he wants to go drinking. I got to do this. So that was kind of fun. Some of the others were like Meshuggah, Drowning Pool. I remember doing a 92.3 show with Breaking Benjamin, another 92.3 show with 30 Seconds to Mars. Actually, my first show I ever worked at Peabodys, this one was on the East Bank, not 21st and Euclid, but on the East Bank, System of a Down opened up for Fear Factory. Wow. And that was the first show I ever worked as the general manager. That was awesome.
That's the perfect show.
Yeah. Who were some of the other bands that we booked that were really cool? Like Norma Jean back then. I remember Derek Hess doing like a really cool birthday poster for me for Norma Jean and some of the other really cool bands. Who were the other wild ones?
Just had Sean Carnage on. He owned U.S. Rocker, and they had all the Derek Hess covers on US Rocker.
Yeah, I still have a lot of his
cool.
artwork, man. But he literally did he was the only guy he ever did a birthday poster was for me. And you can only see it in the background. It's faint in the background because it's blue on blue. Yeah. But it says Happy Birthday Dan, and he won the South by Southwest poster of the year that year.
No way.
And it's my birthday poster. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. So I'm trying to think some of the other bands that we were that there's some like huge, like I had Slipknot after party with Mushroomhead when everybody thought Mushroomhead and Slipknot didn't get along.
Right.
We had an after party with them after a Slipknot show.
Oh, that's cool.
Which was awesome. A lot of we did a lot of after parties with Rockstar with like Hoobastank and Velvet Revolver and stuff like that were really neat. We did a ton of big hip hop shows that were fun.
How about like local bands? Like like a local act. They, obviously there's a lot of local bands coming to you. They're trying to do your thing. Like, were there any that kind of you were like kind of surprised with? Maybe just like. There
was a ton of good bands. There's Side was really good. Liquid was really good. Second Half was my favorite band. Yeah. The Broadview Gutters were really cool punk rock band. Jackknife Power Bombs, Brags and Rogues. My favorite band of all of them was Gil Mantera's Party Dream. Mm-hmm. That they're from Youngstown. They're literally my favorite band of all of them. Oh yeah. It was like Postal Service on crack.
Oh nice.
Yeah, they were incredible. Trying to think of some of the other bands that I just absolutely loved. There's a bunch of bands that I remember from business-wise, like a ska band. I used to book Great Trinky Recall on all the ska shows because I always brought 100 people. Araka Fabian was my biggest jam band. They brought 400 people once to a Battle of the Bands, and then stepped bringing 400 or 500 people for all of our ticket giveaways we'd do with them. Let's see some of the other bands that I just go right off my, you know what I mean. We did a lot of shows. All the Mushroomhead side projects, like the 216, the Dog Fashion Discos, the 13 Faces, all those State of Conviction and Altar Boys and all those. We did so many shows like that. It was crazy. Just trying to think of the other ones that they're just sticking out of my, Guar, La Tigra. That was one weekend once at Peabody's, back to back Guar, then La Tigra. People are like, what? But that was Peabody's,
Right.
I'm sure the next night we probably had another crazy wild show, like Hip Hop Night, probably the completely opposite of both of those. Who were some of the other ones? Artie Lang, which was a cool comedy show we did. Yeah. That was a lot of fun. Yeah. Who were some of the other wild ones? Harmar Superstar. That was a wild, different show. One of the craziest ones of all time was always Robert Ritchie. He was like a local artist in Cleveland. I'd be shocked if he's still alive. Oh boy. Yeah, he had some wild issues. But he would, like, one time he asked me to, when he started off the Pirates Cove, he was the first group to play. He's like, Dan, I want to sacrifice a chicken on stage. I was like, Robert, you can't sacrifice a chicken on stage. He's like, well, that's part of my show. And I was like, no, dude, you're not doing that. It's going to gross people out. There'll be blood, health issues. No. Yeah. So instead, he sacrificed it before the show, and he wore it as his underwear. And he fucking wore a chicken as underwear. Oh, geez. Yeah, the dude was a wild, drunken poet that was just one of those incredible geniuses here in Cleveland. But I doubt he's still alive. But he was definitely one of the guys we always booked because he's like a Cleveland local legend. Okay.
Well, one last thing. So you're doing the EventWorks tickets now. I know you talked about it quite a bit, but is that's kind of your main focus right now?
Yeah, as far as shows go, like you can basically get me to do almost any type of event anywhere if you're willing to use my ticketing platform. Yeah. In fact, because I'm trying to spread it to everything. I'm actually even thinking about helping my buddies out a Pickle Fest in Youngstown. Ironically, the guy that owns Gil Mantera's Party Dream, one of the two members, owns the brewery with his wife next door. Okay. And I might be able to jump home to try to get them out of retirement. I'm going to try. If there's any guy that can do it, it's me. We definitely get along extremely well, and I might do a Pickle Fest out in Youngstown, and we're going to use my ticketing platform as well too.
So, are you competing with like Ticketmaster and Live Nation, or is it different?
The hopes is to get Ticketmaster. It's either Ticketmaster, Eventbrite, like licensing me basically, and using my information to help them with understanding locals, because they understand national acts, they get it, they understand how to sell them, especially Ticketmaster, they get it, but on a local level, they don't understand all the different features that they could do. Okay. So those features and so I'd either license to them, or, which is even a better idea, which is already kind of into play right now, is partnering with a record label. for them to take over the programming and do a buyout for my partners, me to run the business with my partner, Young Cap, that books all of our shows.
Yeah.
And basically have a partner with a major record label instead. We're going to then take all their artists, tour them through our ticketing, so now we control the ticketing as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So right now, we're the lowest ticketing. We charge $1 a ticket, even if it's a $50 ticket. So that's one of our bread and butters, but
Nice.
It's between our proprietary software. We're also the cheapest ticketing. We're very user-friendly as far as the fans go, so it's only $1 a ticket.
Right.
And we're hoping to basically change the ticketing part of how people do ticketing, because it doesn't need to be $15 fees and stuff like
Right.
that for your ticketing. You shouldn't, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
a $50 ticket shouldn't turn into a $70 ticket.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it just shouldn't. Or even a $15 ticket shouldn't turn into a $27 ticket.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it doesn't, you don't need, especially with electronics nowadays,
Yeah.
it doesn't make, we even literally wrote our own code. We send a door person this link, right? It turns that link into any camera, and you can send that link to 100 people in case you have like a festival and you want 100 ticket takers, and it turns any phone into the scanner for that night. So it scans your QR code that you've been given, and it says go or stop that it's been given or not. You know,
Wow.
but it's our own code that we wrote into the software.
That's
you know,
cool.
that is proprietary to us. However, that's why the end game is really, I think, a record label over the other people, because the other two are making enough money that I don't know if they're going to care, to be frank. Where the reason the record label is going to care, it's going to be a whole nother new revenue stream that they didn't think about.
Right.
That's already developed for them with somebody that's experienced as I am.
Right.
That now they can also get a whole nother revenue stream with events as well. So they get two with me. You get events and ticketing. So you get both, and I don't know anybody that has more experience than me at events, at least smaller events. You know what I mean? Like at the club level,
Sure.
You don't get. I don't know another person in the United States of America that has more experience with club concerts than I do. So that's the part of it that comes with it as well too. So that's the neat part.
Cool. Well, I'll tell you what. I appreciate everything. I have a lot of memories at Peabody's. I met a lot of people. It was exciting playing on the Peabody stage, you know, with my band back in the day. And I just really appreciate you stopping by and sharing your stories, man.
I love
think
sharing the stories, man. I appreciate you having me big time, Vince.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Dan. And there it is. Sub CLE, we're out.
Thank you.